It's time for this week's episode of Brandon Sports Talk, featuring in-depth interviews from those who are trending in the world of athletics. And now, here's the host of Brandon Sports Talk, Brandon Pate.
Welcome back to Brandon Sports Talk. In today's episode, I have the privilege to interview the business owner of Rebranded athlete, Dr. Sarah Lepe. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brandon. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Can you talk about how you knew that you wanted to go into obviously starting up a business?
Well, it was one of those things where I didn't even know that this was the route that I was going to go down. I had actually majored in education, so I was a school teacher and then ventured into a leadership position as a school site principal for a while. And I always kind of found with myself, like, how can I better myself or put myself in a position so that I can serve people at a higher capacity? So this whole concept of being a business owner was never on my radar. In fact, if you would have asked me even a couple of years ago if I had any interest in owning my own business, I probably would have laughed and said nope. But right before the pandemic is actually what opened my eyes to this possibility and really taking a look back at my life and where I struggled the most, which was my transition out of athletics. That's really where Rebranded Athlete, which is my business, where it kind of sparked and took off from there.
What was it like, obviously, being a D1 volleyball player?
It was definitely a great experience. It was something that I worked hard to get into. And while I was there, it was also challenging in a good way. It challenged me to become a better person, definitely time management, playing at a high caliber of play, and then also being able to balance being a college student in the mix of things. I often, laugh and kind of, tease with people that I majored in my sport first before I actually majored in education, because there's such a big time commitment, especially being a D1 athlete or any collegiate athlete that goes on to playing into after high school sports. It's a different level and a different sense of commitment, but I absolutely love my time. I think those are years that I look back on and really love what I did as an athlete, and just being around that type of environment is just, I think back now and it's like, man, that was such a great time in my life. But what I've realized now is that wasn't the only great time. I've had many other opportunities to grow, which I didn't know at the time as an athlete, leaving the sport, that life would get better.
What was it like, obviously, going through the educational system and becoming a principal, but then transitioning into obviously owning a sports business?
So like with anything, when it's new, you have your challenges. You don't know what you don't know. So you have to kind of learn your craft and grow from there. I had some great mentors. I come from a family of educators that were very supportive of me getting into education. And then when I finally saw that I had the capacity to become a leader, I did surround myself with people. Even the principal that I worked under was very supportive and wanted to see me become a leader of a school site as well. And so I had that in the mix. And then as far as that transitioning over into business, it's been the same type of thing as well. Like, I've been able to surround myself with people who had the experience or were like-minded as I've been able to grow this business. And I think that's what it's all about. It's constantly every day becoming a lifelong learner, and always, if you don't know the answers, it's okay to ask. And I always told my students that too, because I used to be that shy kid in the classroom that never wanted to say anything. But as I grew up and got into adulthood, it's like, those are the things we have to do in order for us to grow and evolve as people.
How did you come up with the name of your business, Rebranded Athletes?
So Rebranded Athlete actually came on a walk when my husband and I were outside. We were trying to brainstorm different names for the business. And I got to the point where I was like, I really like it. It strikes a nerve with me when, people refer to athletes as being former athletes or retired athletes. And I was like, that has to change because the titles that we give ourselves really do matter. And so the concept of a rebranded athlete, we're not a former athlete, we're not a retired athlete, but instead we're rebranded athletes, which means we take the life skills, the lessons, everything that we've learned from the court, and we apply it to the next phase in our life. Because former, retired sounds like that's a person or that's a thing that you're leaving behind. But I really believe we take it with us and apply it to the next phase of our life.
What are some things that you offer for your business?
So within my business, I do a lot of group coaching and one-on-one coaching through the Rebranded Athlete Academy, which I designed, which is a 6-week program to really help to jumpstart your transition out of sports. And a lot of athletes think that they have a plan, which I did myself as well. I knew I was going to get into the teaching credential program, but I had some hiccups along the way. I actually didn't graduate. I had to finish up a class. And so this process that I walk athletes through is a rebranded athlete game plan, where we not only focus on what your career is next, but really what you want in life, what your purpose is, what potential you have as an athlete, whether you start your own business or you get into the corporate world, the assets that you can bring to set yourself up to be a leader in whatever career or field that you go into.
How's it like obviously helping those college athletes become into the corporate world and obviously transition from playing to getting into the corporate world?
Honestly, I've had lots of jobs in my lifetime, and I think this is by far my favorite thing to do. And I think because I see myself in each one of these athletes that I work with, and when I first started this business, I said, I want to be the coach that I didn't have during my transition. And that's exactly what I do with the clients that I work with. And not only that, just to be, a representative out there for athletes as they transition, because this is something that is not really talked about until it becomes a problem later on. And we wonder why athletes go through alcoholism, depression, suicide rates, all these different things that we shine light on with mental health, but we don't really know the root cause. And a lot of it is these athletes losing their identity as they go from playing into the next phase of their life. Because even for me, I started playing at the age of 8. And, for 14 years, that was a long time to have something be part of you. And then to all of a sudden not have it anymore and try to, figure out who you are, it's very difficult. So I, want to be the person that I needed during that time. And I love what I do now. And I'm looking forward to growing this and the future of Rebranded Athlete.
What's it like obviously seeing them obviously go into the corporate world after their playing time?
Well, that's the thing. It's, there, a lot of people are going in different directions and doing different things, even entrepreneurship. So I think it's wonderful to see them begin to accelerate early on in their careers if they go into the corporate world, even landing internships right away, because athletes don't have time for internships. If they do, it's usually over the summertime, and it's not really like a long process as a normal student in college. And so to be able to see them walk in there with the confidence, knowing what they want, and not just selecting any job that comes to them, they really focus on, and what I work on with my clients a lot too, is finding things that are in alignment with them so that they can be as happy and they can be as successful as they were in their sports when they're off the field as well.
What was it like writing your first book, Pivot from the Game?
So that, honestly, I look back now, I'm like, man, how did I write that book? I was a full-time principal at the time. I was finishing up my doctorate degree, and I don't know where I found the time, but what somebody told me, the advice I had was, don't look at it like you got to sit down and write this huge long paper. You chunk it and do little sections and little processes at a time. So honestly, once I had my outline, I blocked out time, 15 minutes a day. Every morning I would get up, and it was kind of like my journaling for the day before I got to work. That was what I found to kind of really be my happy spot, especially during the pandemic, when different things were going on. It was my opportunity to share my story and to also provide help and support for athletes. So it was definitely a great, a great experience for me. Would I write more books? Absolutely. I have, definitely some thoughts in the process. I'm now a 2-time author. I have a co-authoring program or book that I was part of, soon to be 3. So it's one of those things when you first get started, once you go, you may not stop because you enjoy the process with it.
What is the book Pivot the Game about?
So Pivoting from the Game is a book that is essentially my coaching program. It has the Rebranded Athlete game plan in it, which has 4 quarters. So I do it very similar to a game where there's 4 quarters involved with the process. So we identify the athlete's potential. We talk about the life skills that they have, that they learn on the court, and how they can apply that, their innate strengths, things that they're good at already. And then we look at their purpose. What is your purpose beyond the court? Is it really what you majored in, or is it something else that you're passionate about? And then after the 2nd quarter, we walk into having a path laid out, because without a plan of action, you're not going to be able to take action. So we go in and we start to create some SMART goals and actionable items. And then by the 4th quarter, we're starting to pursue and we're starting to take action on the game plan itself. And so the book is essentially that game plan with my story sprinkled in as well. I really wanted to make sure that the readers, the athletes who are reading it, felt like they were not alone in the process, because as I went through my transition, I felt like I was alone and that nobody else was having these feelings or thoughts about the uncertainty about what was next. So I wanted to make sure that I put that within the book. And so it's an interactive book. You're able to take notes and write your thoughts down as well. And it's an easy read. And that's the beauty about creating your own book, is you can just design it however you like. And I was really tired of reading those, very small print textbooks that we had in college. And I wanted to make this an easy read. So somebody could pick up this book and literally read it in an evening if they wanted to, and be set up for success.
Of course, what was it like also writing your 2nd book, The Athlete to Entrepreneur?
That was a great experience too. That was probably the easiest thing compared to writing my own book. So my own book itself had 8 chapters, and within this co-authoring book, I just had to write 1 chapter. And I think the great part about it is that I've always been like that team-like type person. I love to surround myself with other people, like-minded people. And so having the opportunity to be in a book with other athletes who also told their stories about how they became an entrepreneur through the process and how they took their skills as athletes, it was definitely a great experience. And on top of it, it's been able to allow me to network with other people, and just has opened so many more doors of opportunity as well.
Did you know that you wanted to start a podcast for your Rebranded Athlete?
That was actually something at first I knew I wanted to do. I was super intimidated at first. I had no idea even how to start. So I was watching YouTube to, figure out the easiest ways. And I, bought some podcasting equipment. And one day I didn't even plan anything out. I just hit record my very first episode on Rebranded Athlete podcast. And I really was just talking about what it was all about, what the upcoming things were, a little bit about my story. And then life got busy after that. It was very busy with work and school. And so I didn't do my 2nd episode until 6 months later, which was in January of 2021. And so I vowed to myself that I was going to make sure that I had a lot more episodes. So I'm now on season 2 of the Rebranded Athlete podcast and loving it. I think every time that I get on and interview a guest, it just gets better and better. And I practice more, and I get to be, a better interviewer. And I just love hearing stories of athletes, because we all have something in common. We all went through that transition, but everybody's transition was different.
What is that like, obviously, hearing those former athletes talk about their transition from being a college athlete to getting into the corporate world?
And no matter what athlete I talk to, whether, they played, junior college athletics to the NFL, what I found that we all have in common is we all have common threads as far as the thoughts, the feelings, really the grieving process we went through as we left our sport behind and moved on. And so the commonality there is that it doesn't matter what level you played at, every single athlete is going to go through this transition, and every single athlete is going to feel the same emotions. And so it's really opened my eyes to sharing those stories with the listeners and providing ways that they can handle their transition a little bit more and know that there are other people out there and they're not alone in the process.
What are some notable guests that you've had on the past?
Oh man, I've been super fortunate to have some guests on there. When I first started, it was some of my college teammates, which was awesome because I hadn't spoken to some of them in maybe, 10, 15 years. So to be able to go back and have those conversations with them. But some key ones that I've had lately, Jessica Hardy, which was a gold medal Olympus. She was a swimmer. She was in the London Games. Her story is incredible. Ricky Romero from the Toronto Blue Jays. He was actually a classmate of mine when I was at Cal State Fullerton. So it was great to catch up with him. Then I have an upcoming episode that will be airing soon with Alex Molden, a former NFL player. And he's also in the athlete transition space. So it's really opened my eyes and has allowed me to network with people and really just sit down and have some great conversations. I love talking about athlete transition, and it's one of those things where the conversations, we can go for hours, but we have to cut it off at a certain point.
What are some of your future plans with Rebranded Athlete?
Well, I definitely want to create more of a community with Rebranded Athlete because that's what I also felt that I didn't have during my transition. So I'd love to do some in-person or virtual events where we come together, whether it's a retreat or a summit, different things that I can provide some value for other athletes, and growing my team. Right now, I've got myself and I have a virtual assistant that helps me out with the podcast, but I'm looking forward to Rebranded Athlete continuing to grow here in the future and also create some partnerships with some universities and then also some other athlete transition coaches as well.
What is something that you learned now that you didn't know before starting a sports business?
Patience. definitely takes patience. And I guess what I would have told myself at the beginning is, don't be afraid to reach out to people. It took me a little bit to actually do that. I don't know if I was intimidated by the fact or had imposter syndrome or whatnot, but I have learned that, people who I think may be unreachable is simply an email or a DM. And there's lots of people out there that are willing to help connect you and to help you grow and, give you the support that you need. So not being afraid to make those connections so that you can grow and have the support as well.
What advice would you give college athletes transitioning from playing college to afterlife after college?
I'd probably say the biggest thing is that you are more than your sport. And we attach ourselves so much to athlete identity within our sport. Like for me, I was always Sarah, the volleyball player, and that's who I known myself to be. But once you get past the fact that you're not going to always be able to play your sport the rest of your life, you can do other activities and you can, find love in something else, a different activity or a different venue. But just seeing that the skill set that you have as an athlete, that has the ability to change the world. And that's what I believe is that athletes have the ability to change the world as long as we get them going in the right positions, in the right places that they're passionate about and what lights them up as much as the game did. Finding that in life after sports, I think is the greatest thing. So bottom line is that your time as an athlete is not as good as it gets. And I'm a testament to that, that you're going to have many more seasons in your life that are going to feel as good, if not better than the time that you were standing on that podium.
What advice would you give those former athletes such as yourself that is starting a business to help other athletes?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to, what I had talked about what I wish I would have done more. Don't be afraid to work together with other people. And what I found, especially with this working with athletes, whether it's in athlete transition business or other things, there's definitely power in numbers, and coming together and working with side by side with other people. It just helps to really move this movement forward and get the word out there that this is a need for athletes everywhere, not just collegiate athletes, but professional athletes too, because at some point in time, every athlete, no matter what level they played, every single athlete is going to have to pivot away from the game and figure out what's next in life after sports.
That's great advice. Where can my listeners find you at on social media?
Sure. Yeah. You can find me on Instagram at Rebranded Athlete. I also have my podcast, the Rebranded Athlete podcast. You can find that on all major podcast platforms. If you are into LinkedIn, I'm also on there as well with Rebranded Athlete or Lepe, SLEPE. And then any information that you'd like to hear as far as my coaching program or any ways I can help support you with the transition process, you can visit rebrandedathlete.com and feel free to send me a DM or an email. I'd love to connect with you guys.
Thank you again, Dr. Sarah Lepe, for your interview, and best of luck in your future with Rebranded Athlete.
Thank you so much.
You can find Brandon Sports Talk on Facebook at Brandon Sports Talk, Instagram at Brandon Sports Talk, Twitter at Talk_Brandon, and you can find me on YouTube at Brandon Sports Talk. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you again, Dr. Sarah Lepe, for your interview, and best of luck in your future.
You've been watching Brandon Sports Talk. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Brandon Sports Talk on social media and on YouTube.